Environment Subcommittee, if the clerk will call the roll, please.
Chairman Murphy,
Here.
Counsel Laurie,
Yeah.
Counsel Noon.
Here.
3 present.
Thank you. We're here tonight to discuss green infrastructure. There have been a couple of motions that I've made to look at this. I appreciate the response first given by Mr. Young, the wastewater utility, that a multi-departmental team had been assembled to look at the various issues, look at trying to incorporate the principle of dealing with stormwater on site. And so we also have with us Ms. Lisa DeMayo from the City Engineer's Office and Mr. Lahiff from the Water Department. Thank you for being here. So I had also wanted to talk a bit about the idea of complete streets that Lisa has certainly been supportive of in calling a number of different meetings on that. But I think it's something that we need to plan for with the planning department, so that when we're developing our entire street network, when we're repairing our streets or repaving our streets, that it's done in a coordinated way, and that we have a kind of a plan in place like what New York has, for example, so that we're able to eventually connect up aspects of green stormwater infrastructure. That plan had very clearly laid out the benefits to a more green infrastructure, that the gray infrastructure in certain cases can be far more expensive, can obviously take a longer time to actually be in effect and to be used to the city. And then over time, of course, then it has to be repaired, and so it has a more of a cost over the life cycle of the projects. So it's in our best interest to be working not only on the gray infrastructure improvements that we need to make in coordination with the requirements of the EPA, but also to bridge some of the gaps that might exist because of cost issues with the green infrastructure. And in that way, also improve neighborhoods, create more walkable streets, create more beautiful parks. And so really what I'd like to talk about tonight is any ideas that you all have talked about as part of the interdepartmental team on what can be done to incorporate some of the stormwater control into the ordinance, dealing with things like impervious surface that you find it continues just from front yards onto the sidewalk, a number of different issues that you find walking along the streets in the city.
Good evening. There is a response to a council motion that's on its way, will be in the next packet. A couple of the issues that it feeds into, feeds into what you're talking about. Larger projects that go before the various the Zoning Board of Appeals or the Planning Board go through interdepartmental review. So all the departments have a chance to weigh in on it. So we look at, everybody has a chance to give their opinion and add things in or take things out to make sure that they meet the complete streets philosophies. A couple of examples of that are the Edward Street realignment over behind Walgreens, and the one that's my favorite at the moment is the Newhall Street extension where the Butler School is. They're going to, that project is going to build an extension to Newhall from where Newhall ends out to Gorham Street. That piece of that piece of roadway is going to be the first city-owned right-of-way that's going to have porous pavement in it. So we asked them to incorporate that in there. So there's going to be no drainage infrastructure in that street at all. It's going to be entirely, I believe that's going to be concrete. porous concrete. So that's a first for us. We have it in several locations throughout the city, in parking lots and in privately owned spots. But this is going to be the first city-owned land, so it's an experiment for us to see how it works with the heavy wear and tear of the high volumes of traffic, the high volumes of heavy vehicles, as well as snow and ice. So this is going to be a good experiment. And the way that project has been designed, there are no other utilities going in that street. Everything's going off to either Gorham or the street in the back. So we don't have to worry about any future trench cuts in the porous pavement. So we should have it for a fair amount of time to be able to use it as a study. So I'm excited about that. It's the first one that we're going to have. For the smaller projects, for the individual paving and repaving projects that we do throughout the year, those don't necessarily go through all departments to check because they don't all have regulations or input to give to that. But through my office, we do look at all the complete streets components. We look at stormwater, we look at bicycle infrastructure, we look at sidewalks. Does it have a sidewalk? Does it need a sidewalk? Maybe this is a place where you wouldn't have a sidewalk. Where are the crosswalks? Where are the handicap ramps? So we do look at all of those components as we develop the paving plan for the year. So that's two different types of projects, the larger ones that go through the boards for review, and then the smaller paving projects that we do that way.
Thank you. I think it is useful to look also, make a distinction between the public projects and the private projects. The design of streets obviously being public. In other cities we have things like rain gardens, and there are some examples in this city. UMass Lowell has built some rain gardens in their new properties, the new buildings. But I think what needs to happen really is that we have a comprehensive plan of the entire city so that we see how all of these pieces fit together, so that we're looking at not only, handicap access and sidewalks, but street trees and how the components of the green infrastructure can support each other, with corridors of being able to handle stormwater, how it links up to parks and parking facilities and municipal facilities in general. We have a school plan that we're looking at on the school committee side of things that will completely renovate our entire school facilities. So to be mindful as we do that of the ways in which we can link those redevelopment projects to infrastructure improvements that are going on with streets and also private connections, and to have explicit goals as well, as the New York City has called for in its plan of dealing with the first inch of a rainwater event within 10% of the impervious cover in the next 20 years. Maybe that doesn't make sense when we do kind of a survey of the land and the geology of our city, but we can come up with at least some kind of goal to be working towards, so that as we do both public and private projects, we're constantly improving in that regard.
Well, there are some divisions of DPD that we do work with every year when we put these paving projects together. For example, conservation. If we're going to be doing any paving within a floodplain, we have to go. We go before Concom as well. So there's a public hearing for that, and we also work with the traffic engineer and DPD to make sure we coordinate any paving with parking and any sidewalk development. We also look at. Is it a one-way street? Does it have parking on both sides? Does it have parking on one side? So we do work with those two departments within DPD, but we can expand the number of departments over there that we work with.
And what suggestions, if any, have you talked about for some of the potential ordinance changes that would impact the private development, that would get at the problem of too much impervious cover throughout the city.
I don't know that I've talked with anybody about ordinance changes, but
Okay.
as the projects go through review, it is something that we part of our comments back to the planning board. That's what we're looking at, is to reduce the amount of, what we look at, not necessarily to reduce the amount of impervious surface, but to reduce the amount of runoff from the parcel. So if they can find ways to keep the runoff on their parcel and still maintain their impervious surfaces, then that's okay with me.
I guess the other concern is that eventually, and probably in the near term, the EPA will have a mandate that increases our requirements under the stormwater permits. And if we allow kinds of development under the current ordinances to take place, then the kinds of things that we might have to do in 5 years or 10 years from now to deal with stormwater, potentially a stormwater utility, could impact those developments that are allowed now in negative ways, in costly ways. So that it's better now to incorporate as much as we can into the current ordinances, so that down the road there isn't that much more significant cost of retrofitting or renovating an almost brand new project to be able to fall in line with what's required.
I haven't seen very many cases of where they've had people go back and retrofit an existing project unless work is being done anyway.
In this case, if for example there were to be a stormwater utility, you would then have a property owner that is paying more because of the impact that their development has on stormwater control. And so there's then built into that an incentive to go back and make changes that decreases that impact, so that it also decreases what they're responsible for to the utility. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think so. I'm just not sure how I'm supposed to respond.
What's that?
I'm not sure what to respond, but I believe I know what you're saying.
Well, and so in other words, down the road, 5 years, if we implement a stormwater utility as other towns have to deal with the problem of stormwater.
Yes. Which I believe will be the case for everybody at some point in time.
Right. That's going to have a cost to property owners. And in most cases, it's looking at the ratios of impervious cover.
That there were different models of how they can be set up. That's one model, yes.
And that's one of the models. And so, so if they're designing a particular project according to the current ordinance, there's a potential there that 5 years from now, they're going to regret having designed it that way, because they could have designed it more effectively to deal with stormwater and decreased their future costs. And so I think there's a need, if it is in fact what we're working towards, which I think it is, there's a need to have something in place now.
For some of the projects that we've had that conversation with the applicant, for the most part, they want the paving. They'd rather keep the impervious surface and pay later.
Well, in that situation, then I guess the question is, how far away are we from being able to implement this sort of thing that uses land more effectively or more efficiently?
What would be my guess as to how long till Lowell has a stormwater utility?
No. What would be your guess for how long the city is prepared before they're prepared to actually implement something like this, because there has to be studies conducted to be able to.
For the implementation of a stormwater utility?
Yes.
Typically, the research that I've done is from start to finish, where one is actually passed by the elected body. It's anywhere from 2, 3, sometimes 4 years. I think one thing we want to be cognizant of in doing a stormwater utility, like the city engineer said, is that for private business has to make a decision. Do they want to invest in the infrastructure on their property to deal with stormwater, or would they rather pay a stormwater utility fee instead? And we've seen instances where they have some stormwater utilities that we investigated in other cities that indeed that's what's happened, where private business decides, okay, we don't want to build an infrastructure, we don't want to invest in that. We'll pay the stormwater utility fee. Or you may have a property, and I would do the ones on Lowell and off of Chelmsford Street, maybe on Nottingham Street. I would look at those properties. They're really limited of what they can do dealing with stormwater. So they would probably have little choice of what they could do on site. They don't have an on-site solution. So they would probably be the businesses that would say, okay, we'll have to pay the stormwater utility because we're really limited on what we can do. That cost should incentivize some private businesses to want to invest, but some may choose not to. It's really their purview of what they want to do. As far as the process for getting it done, for starting it, we have investigated what other communities have done, but we haven't actually put our foot to the gas pedal to say, okay, we want to go forward and really start the implementation of a utility as of yet.
What do you estimate the cost to be currently to the wastewater utility of handling the excess stormwater?
It's thousands of dollars, and it certainly would. Well, the purpose of a stormwater utility is to generate costs and funds to deal with the stormwater issues, particularly the new stormwater permit that'll be coming. Because of the requirements that's going to put on the city. So what we're going to have to be testing all our outfalls, mapping the system, and the city engineer and my department have already collaborated on trying to map the system, and guess what? There's not much maps of the drainage system in the city. Fortunately, we have all the CSO work that we've done that's all mapped out, but trying to map the system is going to be pretty expensive for us. We know where the outfalls are. Matter of fact, we do a survey during when the river's the lowest part, when the river's low, usually in August. We'll do a survey of the river, trying to identify as many outfalls as we can. That's how we found quite a few of them. And the stormwater utility, and the new stormwater permit will mandate that we test all these outfalls. That's going to be expensive. Mapping our drainage system, that's going to be expensive. The public education effort that we have to do shouldn't be that onerous, but again, there's cost to that. The street sweeping requirements, the catch basin cleaning requirements. What else am I missing? Yeah, and it's going to involve other municipal facilities like DPW, parks, the water plant, as well as my department also. So it's not going to be a cheap endeavor for the city to do this. Obviously there'll be some study, but we're incurring costs for stormwater like now, like you say. We're cleaning the catch basins, we're doing the street sweeping, we are doing some testing of outfalls, even before we have the permit. We have a rough idea what the requirements are going to be, so we want to be as proactive as we can. But once that permit's issued, then all those costs will be real. So we want to differentiate those costs. That's what the purpose of a stormwater utility is, separate out those costs and create a fund so that you can pay for these stormwater costs. As far as what you're talking, additional flow to the utility, yeah, obviously we want to eliminate as much as we can. But again, for a private citizen or a business, there may not be options for them to deal with stormwater on their site. So the solution for them is to discharge into the sewer. but you pay a fee for that. You pay additional costs for that.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Do you have a question?
Couple of questions. You anticipating any state regulations than we have now further down the road?
There currently are the state regulations, that we are under the EPA regulations, and DEP follows theirs. And we're waiting right now for the 2008 new permit. We're still operating under the 2003 permit, which was a 5-year permit. And the EPA has been saying it's coming out soon, it's coming out soon, it's coming out soon. Now, New Hampshire's has been issued. We're assuming that ours is going to be fairly similar. And there are some very stringent issues in there. Mark mentioned the testing of the outfalls. What he didn't say was what they want us to do is every time it rains, to be out there testing the water that comes out of there to make sure that there's no illicit connections, there's no sewerage in there, there's no industrial connections that are now polluting that it's just stormwater that's coming through those lines. To test that multiple times a month or a year. And not only the manpower to collect those samples, but to send them out for testing and then analyze the results when they come back. And that's going to be one of the biggest new requirements that we have coming down. We had to do some preliminary mapping, but with each iteration of the permit, each of these requirements are getting stricter and stricter.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Noon?
Back to the permit from the EPA, do you know why it take them so long, though? I mean, I know that every 5-year permit, but 2008, and we still operate in 2003, and yet they seem to very strict in terms of having us enforce or having us comply with their, requirement and all that.
That's a good question, and the reason there's delay is there is a lot of, I won't say opposition, but a lot of concerns in cities and communities on the cost that they're going to have to incur. When EPA puts out their public comment period, they're getting inundated with public comments from communities, from cities, from towns. So they're facing some pushback from a lot of communities and towns. So they want to come up with some regulations that in their mind do justice to the environment, but are also realistic and keep in mind the financial burdens that this can place on communities. So they've done quite a few revisions of the stormwater permit. I think that they're at the point now where we will get, that permit will be issued in 2014. I think they're done making the adjustments. They pretty much know what they want to do now. It's just a matter of time of them finalizing it and then promulgating it.
I heard Lisa mentions that one of the requirements in their testing is the testing of the outfall. What happens if something more than just the storm waters come out to what's...
Then, that's a very excellent question, Councilor. Then it's the responsibility of the departments who will be in charge of this to trace back and try to find the source of the illicit discharge. And as you know, this is an old city. A lot of plans don't exist for a lot of the pipes, so it'll be onerous to try to find if there's storage mixed in with some of the stormwater outfalls to try to find out where it goes back. But that's the obligation for that stormwater permit that the EPA will issue. That you go back and you find, and you stop those illegal discharges.
Thank you.
And to be clear, those outfalls are happening now. I mean, because we haven't fully converted, to combine sewer overflow, each high water event is discharging a mixture of...
We have identified as of right now, over 300 outfalls that the city of Lowell has in the various waterways. Drainage outfalls, not sewage outfalls, drainage outfalls, over 300. So that we would be responsible for testing. I believe it's like at least once a year during a wet weather event. I believe. So I mean that's a lot of effort to do the work that we're going to be required.
Right. As Councilor Noon referenced in his question, it is a significant unfunded mandate that the EPA has hit communities with, and that is why I think they've taken longer to actually issue this last one. But nevertheless, I think it's important for the city to be able to prepare in a way that we're able to meet them, and also do it in a way that satisfies other objectives of the city, whether it's, making more walkable neighborhoods, creating better streets. I think there's a way to do it, and to do it more efficiently, and that's by planning in advance. And so that's really what the purpose of the motions were, and the purpose of the subcommittee is to begin a more comprehensive effort, hopefully with the planning department that engages people in different neighborhoods about the importance of street design, stormwater control, and to be able to work off that plan, so that as we're issued these newer regulations, and as the potential for the need for a stormwater utility grows, that we're better able to meet that. Is there any, Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You were talking about we're going to put in a porous road for the extension up at the Butler School. As we move through the future, and there's some technological advances, would it be cost prohibitive to put in the roads down the line when you compare what you would have to put in for the infrastructure?
I'll let you answer that one.
Some of the things that we look at when we are talking about porous pavement, the pavement, talking about asphalt, porous asphalt versus traditional asphalt.
Right.
That line item probably will cost more than traditional. However, you wouldn't need to install catch basins and pipes and manholes to take it all away. So if the distribution system for the stormwater already exists, to put in porous pavement doesn't really save you very much, because you'd have to either take out the catch basins, or you'd have the catch basins and the porous pavement, and it'd be redundant.
Yeah, that's the basis of my question. It would be, it's very costly, I know, to put it in.
Well, when you're building a street from scratch,
Right.
and you put in the porous pavement, which is going to cost you a little more, but now you do not have to put in the catch basins, so there's the savings.
And you also don't have to maintain the catch basins, and you
But you
also
do-
don't have to maintain the infrastructure.
But you do have to maintain the street. And
Oh,
one
absolutely.
difference with that is that we don't use sand here in Lowell anyway, it's all salt.
Right.
But the porous materials you have sand put down on them, and you probably should vacuum them once a year. So you have that versus cleaning out the catch basins. In the end, comparing one to the other from new construction, they turn out being a wash. But to rebuild one into the other, I haven't looked at the numbers, but I'm not sure there'd be a savings there.
Okay.
If we were digging it all up and starting over, that's
Right.
different. But to just remove the asphalt and put it, because you have to have a separate base. The key to having the porous pavement work is the stone base below, where the voids will hold the water.
I'm just thinking, as we put in new roads around the city, new developments and things like that, that's where you're gonna have the cost savings down the line.
Which is why the Newhall Street extension was a perfect, we tried to do it on Edward Street as well, but Edward Street has issues with a high water table. And that wasn't going to work for porous material, because as the water goes through the asphalt, it would have nowhere to go when the water table comes up. So you lose the ability to drain properly. So as it turned out, Edward Street was not a candidate for the porous material, and we had to go to the traditional methods.
I'm even thinking of also parking lots around the city, parks and schools, things like that, where if you do have it, again, it's gonna be a little bit more costly, but the savings may be
Alpine Butcher on Chelmsford Street has porous concrete. Novus Engineering on Middlesex Street has the porous asphalt. There's a couple of condos, that's right, Mark put in both asphalt and concrete in his, when he did his plant upgrades, so he walks the walk, he's got them both in his project. The addresses escape me at the moment, but there's a couple of other condos that have put in the concrete, and they've been happy with them so far.
Good, thank you, thank you.
You mentioned that what's proposed for Newhall Street is a porous concrete, and that we don't use the sand, we salt the roads. How is that going to work with the concrete?
It's been fine in the locations that it has gone in. There's some admixtures that are in with the concrete as well. So it's not just pure concrete, like your concrete steps, if you put salt on them, it wears away.
Right.
There's some admixtures in with it that take care of that.
Okay. But I think that's a good example of, why we need a plan in place, because we did just recently repave the rest of Newhall Street. And if we had been able to better coordinate, we could have had an entire street with impervious concrete.
Well,
And it could have been connected then also to, as Council Laurie said, the parking lot for Olivera Park, coordinated with that whole area that has some park space, so that it's a more integrated system.
With Newhall, there already is existing drainage structures there, so the benefits wouldn't have been the same. So you have to take one out to put in the other.
All right, well, if there's no further discussion, I'd entertain a motion to accept the report as a report of progress, and we'll have some further discussion later.
Make the motion.
Motion by Council Laurie, seconded by Council Noon. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved by Council Laurie, seconded by Council Noon. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. We stand adjourned. Thank you.